We are now on air. Time for a total takeover.
It's finally here. Welcome to a new episode.
It's about to go down.
Pediatrician number 2. After I fired pediatrician number 1, I asked another mom of a trans kid who lives locally for a pediatrician recommendation, and she gave me one. Aside from incessant misgendering from her whole staff, she also said in front of my child that I needed to mourn the loss of my daughter in front of my 9-year-old transgender child. That's something you never say, by the way. In addition, she then refused to write a letter for his name change, stating the fact that he is too young to know himself and refused to connect with his therapist and his endocrinologist. She was the chief of staff at our local hospital. Not only was she disrespecting my son's knowledge of his own self, but she's also disrespecting me.
What are you? Some kind of doomsday machine?
If I said it, I meant it. Bite my tongue for no one, for no one.
Really interesting, Scott. Jeff Bezos, who of course is the founder of Amazon.com, is going to be buying the newspaper publishing businesses of the Washington Post for $250 million.
Now at the helm will be the Oracle of Amazon.
No one thought that someone like Bezos would come in and be the white knight.
He pioneered a digital revolution that put a lot of newspapers that could be out of business.
Bezos seems to be exactly the right kind of guy at this particular time in the history of the Post and what he can bring.
I mean, you know, someone like Bezos could potentially really transform not just the Post, but the entire newspaper industry if he's successful.
So this is a marriage of somebody who knows how to manage your money flow and people who know how to do the job of journalism.
I think this is going to turn out to be a great day for journalism.
We've got some breaking news from the financial world. Elon Musk, the world's richest man, wants to buy Twitter.
Elon Musk is a danger to Twitter and to freedom of speech.
The New York Times article on this called it a treacherous situation.
Fear not, right-wingers. Another bro-fascist is waiting in the wings to defend your right to spew bile online in the name of free speech.
There are massive life and globe altering consequences.
He is building in Tesla a documentedly racist company that perhaps reminds him, gives him nostalgic memories of apartheid South Africa where he grew up.
You know, he likes to be at the center of attention.
So is this all a troll or is this very real?
He's going to take a machete to the Twitter that we know today.
What Musk is trying to do is to open up the platform for more misinformation about.
One of the big questions I have as a member of the media is, would he let someone like Donald Trump back on the platform?
To the conservative news source that wrote an article about me that seemed really focused on the flags I have in my classroom, there's a couple of things you missed actually in here. The first thing you missed is all 13 principles of the Black Lives Matter movement hung up at the top of my wall here, because I want my students to know that that flag is not just a decoration, but that we actually live out these principles in our everyday life. You definitely missed my smaller posters, including this one about getting vaccinated, about voting, all these ones I have from Jay Salazar that are Black historical figures. Man, you missed a lot, including some of the memorabilia and awards I've won as Michigan Teacher of the Year. But, like, go off about my flags.
No offense, but it sounds like some commie gobbledygook.
You have members of your cabinet that are being booed out of restaurants, who have protesters taking up at their house, who's saying no peace, no sleep. No peace, no sleep. And guess what? We're going to win this battle, because while you try and quote the Bible, Jeff Sessions and others, you really don't know the Bible. God is on our side. On the side of the children. On the side of what's right. On the side of what's honorable. On the side of understanding that if we can't protect the children, we can't protect anybody. And so, let's stay the course. Let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
A lot of anti-abortion advocates are also seemingly really into the idea of finding out their child's sex really early on.
And I think this is because of this like underlying cultural idea that gender confers humanity. And, you know, if you're against people aborting fetuses, you need to construct them as like fully people. And one of the mechanisms to do so is by putting gender on them. So like, you know, we often call fetuses like it, or we call even early babies, we often call it. You know, babies, like, it's crying because it's, like, not quite gotten gender and it's not quite become a person. But, like, a lot of conservatives who are really anti-abortion and really pro-reproduction, they're obsessed with gendering their children before they're even born. So they come into a world fully gendered because it's, like, how to humanize them and to stop people from being able to have safe access to abortions.
Why don't you wake up and smell what you shoveling?
The deal is done. Twitter has been sold to Elon Musk.
My tummy meter says there's something just not great about this.
He talks about it being a free speech platform. I'm not sure what that means.
This guy has no experience whatsoever with any of the lines of business involved in Twitter.
It seems to me that it's about free speech of straight white men. And
in many ways, Twitter has been a dark, dark place. I hope it doesn't get any darker.
You know, this is a weird guy, and it's going to be a private company.
Our public conversations shouldn't be at the whims of anybody.
Amazon founder Jeff Bezos also throwing shade at the deal, questioning whether China would gain more influence over Twitter.
If you have $44 billion and you use it to buy Twitter, you make bad decisions.
This affects all of us in terms of misinformation.
You know, I guess billionaires want to take over free speech, and I'm not here for it.
He talks about it being a place where there's trust, where there's open algorithms. So it's a lot of words, and it's kind of a word salad.
I'm confused about what to do. You know, we all use Twitter. Do I stop or do I wait and see what happens?
And for me, that is something that is a bit scary.
I had a gynecologist appointment today to get an Explanon implant in my arm, and which is birth control, by the way. And my gynecologist is usually pretty respectful. I've only had 2 appointments, but you know, she's respected me as a trans person. Well, today, as I was checking out for my appointment, I was standing right there in front of her. And she starts talking to the woman that's the nurse that's checking me out. And she misgendered me right in front of me. I didn't say anything because it was 10 o'clock in the morning. That's early for me and it just didn't seem worth it. Maybe I'll confront her in my next appointment in 6 months, if I remember.
There's something wrong with his medulla oblongata.
Do the parents know that you guys are doing this to the kids? Do their parents know that you're doing this to the kids? Do you have parent consensual forms to do this to the kids? I don't know who you are. Do you guys have parent consensual forms to do this to these kids? Do the parents know that you're doing it to these kids? Excuse me, ma'am. Do you know if the parents have consent to do this? Look what they're doing to these kids. Look at this. Look what they're doing to our kids. No consent. This is disgusting. This is disgusting.
Do you have an opinion on voter ID laws?
They're usually pretty racist.
Those laws are racist?
For sure.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Definitely, because they're less likely to have state IDs. These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs.
I think that's harder for black people to go online.
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
A lot of people have smartphones, but you might not have data.
For most of the communities, they don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware.
Now I'm here in East Harlem to ask black people their thoughts on what you just heard. You have ID?
Yes. Why would they think we don't have ID? Why would they say that?
Everybody that I know have ID.
I heard a lot also that black people can't figure out how to get to the DMV.
I know it's at. It's on 25th. It's on 125th Street.
I also heard a lot that black people, especially poor black people, have no access to the internet.
I had access to the internet for years. Who are these people talking to?
Do you have a problem that if you go to vote and they say, "Can we please see your ID?"
I love showing my ID.
You have an issue with that?
No.
Host of Fearless, and we're always happy to have him on this show. Jason, thanks so much for coming on tonight. So you've watched all of this, you've been writing about it. What's your reaction?
First, I just want to salute you. Hats off. One of your best monologues, and that's saying a lot. I hope that I can meet your standard. Tucker, I want to analogize this to the movie Don't Look Up. Leonardo DiCaprio's last movie on Netflix. It was an analogy about climate change, about a meteor coming to hit, a comet coming to hit Earth and destroy everything. It was a spoof on climate change. We're looking at political climate change, and the left is losing its mind. They ignored the warnings from the Tea Party. They ignored the warnings from the MAGA movement. They ignored the warnings delivered in a big, powerful way on January the 6th. And now they have to deal with the ramifications of that. People like Elon Musk, hats off to him, man with the money is fed up with their censorship and their tactics and the whole climate around media, the woke media. CNN Plus collapse. Rachel Maddow running away from her TV show. Netflix collapsing, losing subscribers. We're in the middle of the climate change that America needs, and the left is losing its mind. Don't look up. They're all scared.
So this, I love that analogy. So we're not overstating it. This really is the beginning of actual change.
Listen, the meteor will be here come November, these midterm elections. They're all running around like, oh my God, we've lost control of public discourse with Twitter. This comet that's coming for us in these midterms elections could be even worse now that we don't control public discourse through Twitter, now that we don't have our hitman to assassinate the character of anybody that challenges our authority. I'm just very hopeful that Elon Musk stays the course. I'm prayerful that Elon Musk is protected, because what he has done, again, with this climate change, changing the climate of Twitter, is incredibly threatening to this democratic, authoritarian style government, this move of Marxism and trying to mimic the behaviors of China. He has disrupted everything. I don't know if in my career, in 30 years in journalism, 35 maybe, I don't think I've seen anything this disruptive as what he's pulled off here. And I just delight in the fear that it's caused and the panic that it's caused among the left, that he's over the target. This is incredible. This is an incredible time to live and to witness this. They've ignored all the warnings, the warning signs that this was coming, that people were eventually going to rise up and say, you can't feed me lies forever. You can't you can't intimidate me and send out your Antifa thugs and Black Lives Matter thugs and terrorize our cities and get away with it forever. The storm is coming. I'm just happy to be a witness to it.
Amazing. They're rooting for the tank over the man, and the rest of us know it. Jason Whitlock, it is so great to see you tonight. Thank you.
It is so wonderful that we have a president, President Biden, who supports us and advocates for us and who sees us.
Oh, come on. This is just, the level of self-parody becomes absolutely unbearable. But we still can ask the obvious question, which is, if sex distinctions are fake, do we still have women? Delano Squires is a contributor to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. We're happy to have him rejoin us. Thanks for coming on. So what is this? I mean, you know, this has consequences. It's not simply about one group of people and their fight for recognition or equality or whatever the point is. We're redefining sex. So what does that mean for the civilization?
Tucker, that's a big deal for civilization. And I think in the video you played, when you hear the president use the term made in the image of God, right? He's referencing biblical language about the Imago Dei, but what he's doing is corrupting it, because God made male and female, and whether you believe in Genesis or genetics, that is what everyone has believed basically up until 7 years ago. The biggest problem with this, or one of the big problems with this, is that this entire movement has been aided and abetted, I'd say primarily by two groups. One, some of the most powerful women in media, journalism, politics, business, whether they work at CNN or MSNBC or New York Times, who have spent an entire career talking about how hard it's been as a woman to achieve equality. And then they've allowed themselves to be cowed into silence by a small group of men who are experiencing serious mental health challenges, and a large group of craven activists. So for women like Joy Reid or
you know, Rachel Maddow or Jemele Hill. So again, whether they work at ESPN or MSNBC, they finally found a group of men that they're willing to submit to. Because when Rachel Levine speaks and when Leah Thomas speaks, these women feel that they have to be silent. So in effect, they are about to diversity, inclusion, and equity themselves right out of existence.
That is so deep and so true. I wonder, and so nicely put, thank you for that. Do you think they realize it?
I think they know it, because one of the things that you'll see, right, you may have, you know, like Congressman Cori Bush talk about birthing persons, right?
Right.
But then when they start to talk about abortion, they'll tell men to shut up because this is a woman's issue. So every once in a while, an issue will come up that'll knock them right back into reality. But really what they're doing, they're robbing young girls of opportunities in sports, in culture and politics, and they are completely undermining the message that they've been giving for the last 6 decades. They've been telling girls, speak up for yourself, don't be afraid, and in many respects, Tucker, they've gone from I am woman, hear me roar, to singing, this is a man's world.
It's almost like they don't really know what they want. Just throwing that out there. Mr. Squires, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
2 days after the breach of the Capitol on January 6 last year, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz appeared on this network to say something that turned out to be completely correct. Gaetz said there is a liberal faction within the Republican Party's leadership that saw January 6th as a way to gain more political power for themselves. Watch.
Well, there's secretly been an anti-Trump caucus within the Republican Party in Washington for a while, and I'm concerned that folks like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and others might view this as an opportunity.
Well, that turned out to be prescient, and it wasn't just an anti-Trump caucus. It was people who were opposed to Trump's voters and their concerns. So just 2 days after Gaetz said that, the House Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy of California, said that Gaetz's remarks were a physical threat because, like a liberal college professor, he believes that words are violence. And then another member of Republican leadership, Steve Scalise of Louisiana, suggests that Matt Gaetz had somehow committed a crime. Watch.
The other thing I want to bring up, and I'm making some phone calls to some members, I just got something sent now about Newsmax, something Matt Gaetz said, where he's calling people's names out, saying an anti-Trump in this type of atmosphere. And some of the other places, this is serious stuff people are doing that has to stop.
Okay, what did Gaetz say? Gaetz brought up Liz specifically. I just saw that on Twitter.
And Adam, someone just sent it. Gonzalez just sent it to me, so I'm calling Gaetz. I'm explaining to him. I don't know how much to say, but I'm going to have some other people call him too. But the nature of what, if I'm getting briefing, I'm going to get another one from the FBI tomorrow. This is serious shit. Cut this out.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's potentially illegal what he's doing.
Well, he's putting people in jeopardy, and he doesn't need to be doing this. We saw what people would do in the Capitol.
It's potentially illegal to criticize me? What are you, Taylor Lorenz now? Steve Scalise? What is this? In another recording, Kevin McCarthy suggests that Twitter should continue to censor Republicans, pull them off the internet. Now, he made that remark in a response to a tweet he didn't like from Alabama Republican Congressman Barry Moore, who was justifiably outraged by the death of Ashley Babbitt. Listen.
He tweeted at Marjorie Greene and at NARAL, I understand it was a black police officer that shot the white female veteran. You know, that doesn't fit the narrative.
What? Ow. Oh, man.
This is what we have to confront with this.
Can't they take their Twitter accounts away too?
Well, actually, that claim turned out to be completely true, but truth is no defense. If you irritate the New York Times, Kevin McCarthy would like you pulled off the internet. This is the leader of Republicans in the House of Representatives. There are a lot of tapes like this. On another tape, McCarthy says he wished Donald Trump would resign, probably the least of his sins. Fox's Bill Malugin asked McCarthy about that. Watch the response. It's amazing.
On a call with House Republican leadership, and you're heard on that audio saying that you've, quote, had enough with President Trump and that you would tell him to his face it would be your belief that he should resign. Do you still stand by those comments?
Look, I never told the president to resign. It was a conversation that we had about scenarios going forward.
And regarding that audio tape, you had said the New York Times reporting on it was, quote, false and wrong. Then the tape came out. Did you lie?
No, because what was brought to me is said that I called the president to say that to resign. I never called the president to say resign.
So the thing is, okay, that's a lie, one of many. Here's the most depressing fact. So all the Republicans in the House got together today, and McCarthy, Scalise, they did not apologize for what they did, and they got an ovation. They got applause from members of the Republican conference. That's how brainwashed and addicted to McCarthy's money they are. Matt Gaetz is a Florida congressman. As noted, he was there today. He joins us now. Congressman, thanks so much for coming on. So you were accused by Kevin McCarthy, the guy who is in line to be Speaker of the House, of committing an act of violence by giving your opinion, by saying he was against the former president. Like, is speech violence? What do you make of this?
Well, I was just describing the facts. You had a group of people who are going to try to join with Democrats to impeach President Trump, and that is precisely what has played out. You mentioned he's in line to be Speaker. I mean, I don't know that Kevin McCarthy's in line to be Speaker. I don't know if the guy could get an account on Truth Social at this point based on the inconsistency between the recordings and what he says to us. And it is debasing for Republicans to give this guy a standing ovation after he smears Trump, lies to the country, and then tries to sick big tech and the DOJ on members of Congress whose views he doesn't agree with and whose factual representations are ultimately borne out. And the crazy thing about this, Tucker, is that it was all done for the sake of protecting Liz Cheney. I mean, at the time, I was protecting President Trump from impeachment, and Kevin McCarthy was protecting Liz Cheney from criticism. And now she is owning them with their own words. And maybe Liz Cheney has done us a favor because now finally you don't have to be a lobbyist with a $5,000 check to know what Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise really think. You know, I was upfront about the fact that I was going to politically oppose Liz Cheney. I went to Wyoming. I made my case there. This notion that you can have these sniveling calls and try to foment action against Republicans by big tech and the DOJ is not fitting of leadership.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you can represent Republican voters if you're personally annoyed with Trump. Okay. But you cannot represent Republican leaders if you're calling on big tech to censor voices who criticize you, and if you're accusing people who criticize you of committing an illegal act of violence, as Steve Scalise did. Now, you saw Scalise today. Did he apologize to you for that?
He said he was sorry if it caused me any problems, but what I said to Steve Scalise is that if you accuse someone of potentially breaking the law, and by the way, he wasn't reacting to something, he raised the prospect of the illegality of my statement that Liz Cheney was anti-Trump. I know I really went out on a limb there, Tucker, but if you accuse someone of breaking the law, you have to say what law you think they broke, and you have to present what evidence you think you have. And if there is no evidence, you need to acknowledge that. And if not, then you're like maintaining this fiction for the sake of your own pride, and that's not what leaders do.
But what you're doing is reading the other side's script. I mean, listen to these guys talk, and they sound like MSNBC contributors. I'm so triggered. He criticized me. That's a crime. We should boot him off. We should censor him. I mean, they're equating speech with violence, calling for censorship, and describing disagreement as a criminal act. How is that not? How are these people not liberals? That's what liberals say. Like, what is this?
Well, you see, I will be the one criticized because people will say this is divisive. We should be unified against the Democrats. The problem is the Democrats win if Republicans take power and then think and talk and behave just like the Democrats. So I'm presenting an alternative vision, and it would be nice if the leadership wasn't the lagging indicator on these things. They were the last ones to realize that Liz Cheney should have been tossed out of leadership. I was out there making the case, and ultimately they caught up. But leaders lead from the front. They're not the lagging indicator.
Yeah, you just feel so sorry for Republican voters. I mean, no one's standing up for them. They're totally exposed. Some are still in jail. And the guy who's supposed to lead them to freedom sounds like a Joy Reid staffer. It's very distressing. And anyway, sorry. Mr. Gaetz, I appreciate your coming on tonight and for your willingness to be open about what you've seen. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
So
Listen. Broadcasting live right here at the Room D. It's yours truly, the one called Melodic. Along with the main man Chief, feeling music, food for your soul. Get the CD, y'all. Come on. Let's not play around or pretend. Bet that use your lifeline to call a friend. This time it's not multiple choice. It's the one they call Melodic with the golden voice for your own good. Play the percentages. We evade through these lyrical passages. On top of my game, and there's no secret. Call my home with hip hop. Now let's keep it on the level playing field for the time being. Through these rhymes, cause seeing is believing. Metaphors and similes go hand in hand. The Trump brothers are truly in demand. From the land of France they reside. This music is universal, instructional, on how to proceed with life. Feeling serene like Mac the Knights. So come on, from east to west and north to south, we've come to turn this party out. It doesn't matter what mood you're in, we've come to make this spin. From east to west and north to south, we've come to turn this party out. It doesn't matter what mood you're in, we've come to make this musical vibe is just the beginning. Cross the finish line and grow record time. Now who is the one left standing, carrying the torch, never looking to reward the supreme mission? Improve this condition, all the while there's cancers and remissions. Looking for alternative medicine, I arrived on the scene with my hip-hop team. More certified specialists, not regretting this nor denying this. Many words can describe this revival. Looking to the major step of approval. I know when that goal is accomplished. Just look at the dance floor. People begging for more as I explore. Cause I got much more in store. From east to west and north to south, we come to turn this party out. It doesn't matter what mood you're in, we come to. From east to west and north to south, we come to turn this party out. It doesn't matter what mood you're in, we come to. Rhyme the beats come together like a conference. They sent me to moderate the nonsense. Filter out all spam and viruses. Hack my username and password. Insert my firewall as the latest definitions. Don't step to me in your condition. When I'm the father and have my pure loyalty. Time to pay bills with cash and royalties. Make the effort to release my wisdom. On time with this lyrical design. My goal is to proceed. Give hip hop just what it needs. We aim to please, never ceasing to amaze. Just another day in this hip hop craze. But the day doesn't have to end like this. On and on to the break of dawn. When I say hip, you say ha. Hip, hip. When I say hip, you say ha. Hip, hip. Yeah, chief. Yeah, chief. Yeah, chief. From east to west and north to south, we've come to turn this party out. It doesn't matter what mood you're in, we've come to make this spin. East to west and north to south, hey, hey, yeah. Doesn't matter what mood you're in, hey, spin. Hey, hey, yeah. One more time. When I say hip, you say ha. Hip, hip. When I say hip, you say ha. Hip, hip. Yes. Yes,